So again, our session today is exploring different blended instructional models using assessments, featuring experienced users. My name is Brian Story, and I'm a teacher engagement manager with ASSISTments. I'll get into more of that in just a bit. As a quick note, make sure that you keep your volume on mute in the bottom left corner of your Zoom window. You can feel free to share video if you like. And then as we go, feel free to share any questions, ideas, or wonderings that you have in the Zoom chat as well. Our goal for today is that participants are going to be able to learn valuable classroom practices from experienced assessments users and concrete ways to use assessments to support different blended learning models. To reach this goal, we'll start with just an overview of assessments, and then we're going to get into our featured presenters. We'll have some Q&A time, and then do our wrap-up. So again, I'm Brian Story. I'm a teacher engagement manager with ASSISTments. I basically work to develop a lot of our professional learning. Prior to this work, I was a public school teacher in Washington, D.C., and also in Norfolk, Virginia. So definitely happy to be with you today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dawn Peterson. I'm going to be the chat moderator today. I'm also a teacher engagement manager for ASSISTments. I taught in Massachusetts 8th grade for 14 years, and I used ASSISTments for 10 of those years. So I'm excited today to hear how everyone else is using ASSISTments in their classrooms and to answer any questions or thoughts that you want to put into the chat.
Excellent. Thank you, Dawn. So ASSISTments is basically a tool that provides teachers and students the feedback that they need to grow and improve over time. It's designed to be flexible and to support different teaching needs, both in person and virtually, and we seamlessly integrate with Google Classroom and Canvas as well. When we think about ASSISTments, we typically think about these 4 steps, and these are the same 4 steps that are a part of any activity or lesson that you do with your students. Step 1, creating assignments by selecting the problems you want and sending those off to Google or Canvas. Assisting students through immediate feedback as they answer their questions. Assessing class performance using our assignment report. And then finally, analyzing answers together by sharing and discussing data with your students. ASSISTments is a research proven tool. We have a tier 1 rating by Evidence for ESSA, so we're very proud of that. We're one of only 3 middle school math interventions with that level of evidence. And that's based on a randomized control study that we did in Maine. Basically we found that students who regularly used ASSISTments scored 75% or higher than students who did not use the program. And also students with lower prior achievement experienced an even greater benefit. So using ASSISTments helped to narrow that achievement gap. So today's topic, like I said, is exploring different blended instructional models with ASSISTments. So let's sort of preview that topic and talk about why we chose it for today. Before we dive into that, I just want to note that today's session is going to focus on, ASSISTments supporting blended instruction. If you want to get a more, technical training on how to use ASSISTments, please feel free to register for one of our upcoming drop-in help sessions, or you can visit our webinar library for recordings of our new user trainings as well. And then in addition, be on the lookout for our spring semester webinar series starting in January. We're going to have a lot of exciting opportunities for teachers to learn. So why this topic? We know that teachers have their own approaches to instruction, but essentially the decisions that every teacher is making have to do with the format in which students learn. Is it individually, small groups, etc.? The technology that's being used and for what purpose? How you give students feedback and assign grades, and also how you approach differentiating instruction for those who need more support or who are ready to move beyond the current topic. We recognize that, schools all over the country are dealing with different instructional models based on, whether students are working remotely or in school or a hybrid of the two. We know that right now more than ever, teachers lean on the expertise of other educators and experts for good ideas to grow and learn. And so that's why we're excited to elevate the voices of our teachers and experts today to sort of share some of what they're doing and help you figure out how to leverage assessments as part of your own routine. Assessments was designed to be a teacher-paced tool and to flexibly support a variety of instructional needs and models. So we do find that a lot of teachers, who were using assessments when we went into this, the lockdowns and all of the changes with COVID in the spring, that assessments was super flexible and kind of allowed them to continue along with their assessment structure and get the data that they needed, get students the feedback that they need. So teachers are using assessments in lots of different ways. Like I said, we're flexible, and it's based on, how it's used is based on the instructional needs of you and your students. You could be using it for homework assignments. You might be using it to do whole class assignments with your entire class of students. You could be using it to deliver differentiated group work. You could be using it to deliver formative assessments. You could even be using it for summative assessments. We have a lot of those as well. And then you could also be using assessments to provide mastery-based learning opportunities for students. Today, we're going to showcase some different blended instructional models and how assessments can support that. And so with that, we thought it would be a good idea to get started with Modern Classrooms Project. Kareem Fair is the executive director, and so he's going to share some about the instructional model that he uses or has developed and coaches and trains teachers on, and how that could potentially align with assessments. We're going to follow that up by a Q&A section where folks can ask some questions. And then we're going to hear from our experienced teacher users, Yamika Bullock and Sarah Irish. Yamika is a middle school math teacher at West Edgecombe Middle School in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And Sarah Irish was an assistance teacher for many years and is now a tech integration specialist with Lewiston Public Schools in Maine. And so once we hear from our teacher presenters, we'll also have a Q&A and give folks a chance to ask questions. As a note, while we're hearing from presenters, you can feel free to chat any questions, wonderings, or ideas that come to mind as you listen. If you'd like to hear from a specific presenter, make sure that you that presenter's name. And then our chat moderator, Dawn, is going to track the questions that come in and sort of share big themes and ideas during the Q&A so that we can hear from our presenters. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kareem from the Modern Classrooms Project.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Wonderful to meet all you all. It's so cool to have everyone from across the country here. And thanks, Brian, for the intro. And I know you're going to kind of co-present with me and share how assessments can be aligned to our instructional model. Just to get a little bit of an overview on myself, I was an educator for years. I did co-found the Modern Classrooms Project, and I'm now the Chief Executive Officer of the organization. I was teaching high school math. I taught prop stats, algebra, IB mathematics, everything in between. And in 2018, I won DC Public Schools Award for Classroom Innovation. And it was because of the blended self-paced mastery-based model that I had created in my classroom. I was teaching a very high diversity of learning levels, students with really high needs. And I knew that sort of the traditional lecture approach wasn't effectively meeting my students, nor was a sort of fixed pace approach. And I needed to find an alternative way to meet their needs. So after that happened, I founded the Modern Classrooms Project. We're a nonprofit that trains teachers on our instructional model. And oftentimes what we found is educators then align our instructional model with an extremely cool tool like ASSISTments, which allows them to sort of execute the key elements of our mastery-based grading approaching and the self-pacing elements quite well. So that's an overview on me. Now, I do always want to kind of preview why I always felt like traditional models weren't working. I taught in environments with a high diversity of learning levels. So first, I saw my on-grade level and present students. These kids really, really struggled to access my content. They thought my content was boring. They felt uninspired because I was sort of teaching to the middle, right? So my highest performing students were sort of uninspired by my traditional fixed pace approach. And then there were my absent students. Now, I always said I sort of cultivated chronic absenteeism in the way that I was teaching traditionally. Students who missed my class because maybe they're experiencing trauma, something was going on at home, or just simply couldn't make it. they always felt like they couldn't re-enter the classroom environment. And when they did, I was just on lesson 4. They had missed lessons 2 and 3. I sort of tried to fill the gap in some weird way. It didn't really work. And especially in math, that's quite destructive because then it kind of has this breakdown of understanding. And then ultimately they started to not like coming to my class, right? If you're chronically absent, especially if it's due to trauma, and then every time you come back, you don't feel supported, it doesn't feel like a great learning environment for you. And then for my below proficient students, where I taught, this was the majority of kids. They were consistently lost during the lecture. They felt like I was speaking too fast. They needed some fill in the gap areas. They oftentimes felt like they couldn't ask me enough questions in the lecture. And if they kept peppering me with questions, then it slowed the whole group down. And then they would sometimes engage in behavior issues. And I always felt like this was sort of an odd challenge, right? I had students who clearly didn't feel supported by my approach to teaching, and naturally were going to be disengaged. And then I would grow frustrated with them for being disengaged, even though I wasn't giving them what they needed, right? And there was this vicious pattern. So ultimately, I, as the educator, started to feel like the failure. I could see this consistently happening in my classroom. I knew that I wasn't meeting my students' needs effectively. It wasn't because some admin was telling me that I was failing to meet students' needs. It was because I was going home and just knew that there was a large percentage of my students that I wasn't effectively reaching. And it was time for me to sort of rethink the way that I met my students' needs. So what this all told me at the time was that one size doesn't fit all. And I think we know this as educators, but knowing this is not the same thing as creating instructional models that actually recognize it, right? I knew the first year I started teaching that one size didn't fit all. But that wasn't actually what I was able to kind of cultivate in my classroom. And what I realized is when classes move too fast for some or too slow for others, you see these really negative impacts. First, you're going to get students becoming disengaged, right? Ultimately, if you're not just hitting that perfect speed for kids, then they kind of deflate, either because they're bored or because they're lost. Then teachers become frustrated, right? You're annoyed because you're pouring all this time and energy into creating these learning experiences that aren't landing on most of your students. And that's exhausting and frustrating. And it's not like the more you work, the more students you capture. There's a certain kind of point of no return where you can build the most beautiful lecture and design the greatest lesson ever, but when you're teaching a diversity of learning levels, that isn't necessarily going to land for them. And then lastly, you have this environment where graduates aren't actually leaving with the skills that they need. Now, I actually taught at the same school that Brian Story taught at when we first met. And, at that school, we had a 1% proficiency rate in Algebra 1, and I was the Algebra 2 teacher, right? So how do you get in a situation where kids have a 1% proficiency in Algebra 1, they're in my Algebra 2 class, right? They clearly don't have the skills that they need, and then they're being pushed into kind of graduation and just kind of going through a series of hoops. They're not actually mastering any content. So we as educators saw this ourselves. We knew this was happening in our classrooms, and we were kind of committed to creating a new approach to teaching that would potentially allow us to kind of rethink the one-size-fits-all approach. So our mission as an organization is to just empower educators with our blended self-paced mastery-based instructional model to actually lead a movement of educators on a research-backed model. It's designed to leverage technology to improve educator effectiveness and learner understanding, and that's our goal. So we really focus on reshaping the teacher experience. I want to stress this. What we believe is that if we can reshape an educator's ability to leverage technology to efficiently and effectively focus on student learning, that's going to reshape the student experience. I often got frustrated as an educator who would sit through PDs where people would talk about how my students' experience was going to suddenly change if I implemented a tool, but didn't actually explain to me how my experience was going to change. And I knew my experience was inefficient and I wasn't effective at meeting students' needs. So please articulate to me how I am actually going to operate differently in the classroom. And then I might believe that this implementation tool or this idea might actually have a real impact. So here's our instructional model, and I want to talk about it in buckets. I actually have a slide on each component. So I'm going to give a high-level overview, and then I'll dig into each bucket, and that's when Brian's going to loop in and explain where ASSISTments can kind of fly in there. And if you all are interested in it, I strongly encourage you to just pop into our website and watch the Edutopia video. It is an in-person setting. Our model was built in the in-person setting, but it certainly can handle the blows of COVID-19 quite well. But that's the best way to see the model in action. So it's a blended self-paced mastery-based approach. I feel like everyone on the planet in education has heard all these words interchangeably in weird ways at this point, but our model actually has a through line. So the first thing we focus on is eliminating lectures. Right? We're not eliminating whole group discussion. We're not eliminating collaboration. We're eliminating those moments when you are just articulating to kids, here's how you add fractions, here's how you add factor a quadratic, here's how you find slope. But instead of eliminating lectures by going on Khan Academy or using an external tool, we believe that educators, all you all, can actually build your own instructional videos. And we've believed this for years, that educators can be their own video creators, that you should be your own video creators. You are the ones who know your students best. You can personalize to your students' needs, and your kids want to hear from you. So the first thing we do is actually train teachers on how to build instructional videos in a lean and effective way. So you can replace those lectures and students can watch instructional videos instead. Now, that's not a classic flipped classroom. Flipped classrooms mean that kids are watching videos at home. We know from an equity issue standpoint, some kids can't watch videos at home always. Some kids may not have the access or the time. What it is just eliminating those lectures through instructional videos. The next phase is self-paced learning, but what we believe in is self-paced learning within each unit of study, which is unique to us. A lot of self-paced learning platforms look at that in the full year, and we see some real dangers in that. And then mastery-based grading. And the main thing to know about our mastery-based grading approach is we're curriculum agnostic. So we don't actually change curriculum that you use. We believe that teachers are the experts on their curriculum. We just support educators on how you show and kind of deliver mastery-based tools. So for blended instruction in particular, we're eliminating that whole class synchronous direct instruction from normal class structure. There are exceptions. I tell this to folks all the time. Every year when folks start using our model, they're like, can I speak in front of the room? Can I lecture? And I'm always like, you can do, first of all, whatever you want. You're the teacher. That's your room. But our goal really is to eliminate those moments when the first time a kid learns a skill is kind of in that fixed live approach. We don't know which kids can move through that faster. We don't know which kids are going to need more time. Why are we sort of casting that wide net and hoping some kids bite when we could have them watching instructional videos? The reason why teachers develop their own instructional videos is twofold. One, when I started using instructional videos in my classroom years ago, I didn't build my own instructional videos. I actually did find ones online. And what I quickly realized is if you use a Khan Academy video at the 9th grade algebra level, Khan is going to assume that every single student has mastered every single thing up to that skill. So when you show that video to a group of students that are very diverse in ability levels, if they aren't 100% proficient up to that point, they're likely to be confused. There's going to be skills that they don't understand. There's going to be moments in time where they're lost. And you as their teacher know when those things happen. You know when remediation is required. You know when greater clarity is required. Khan doesn't know your students and therefore will not be able to kind of build the instructional videos that are aligned to their needs. The second thing is relationship building. We all know the importance of building relationships with students, but if I'm a teacher and then I give my students an external resource, they're often going to say, well, then why are you the expert in the room? How do I know to trust you, especially early on in the year? And I saw this quite quickly. So that's kind of why we believe deeply in that. And then the last thing is we train teachers on how to utilize their learning management systems effectively. We do this by just showing folks how you can cultivate a self-paced environment using an LMS. We are LMS agnostic as well. So Google Classroom, Canvas, a Google site, Schoology, Microsoft Teams even. So we do all that kind of support with educators.
Excellent. Thank you, Kareem. And just to sort of piggyback off of that, ASSISTments sort of comes in that we have a seamless integration with Google Classroom and Canvas, and that allows teachers to embed both instructional content or embed instructional content into their formative assessment, and also allows them to differentiate different assignments for different students based on their ability level. And so just to illustrate what this looks like for an ASSISTments assignment, I'm going to go over to Google Classroom, one of our demo classes here, and I've already pushed an assignment to Google, but I'm going to click the triple dot and click Edit. And so here you can see I've already added an individualized feedback video for one student. So I only want one student to get this assignment. So underneath the 4 drop down, I can then, and let me just get a little zoom piece in the way there. I can just deselect all the students, pick the specific student that I want to receive that assignment. And then now that one student is going to get both their ASSISTments assignment. They'll have the instructions to review the attached feedback video and then complete their ASSISTments problems. So this is a way to sort of provide that individualized instruction that's appropriate for the students, and also for you to share that feedback using maybe some of those videos, instructional videos that that Kareem was talking about to support students as they continue through their learning process.
Perfect. So once you've actually eliminated lectures, now you can actually unleash the benefits of self-pacing, which I think is incredibly exciting. It's the most innovative part of our model. So in our classrooms, first, students are only self-paced within each unit of study. We hear this question all the time, and I actually agree wholeheartedly. you let kids self-pace for the entirety of the school year, some kids will be stuck on unit 1, other kids are on unit 5. Those kids on unit 1 are going to deflate. They might already have low confidence in a math class, and now they're 3 units behind. They're just going to give up. So we actually allow kids to all collectively move to the same unit together, and also encourages collaboration. So if you're sitting here, you're probably wondering, well, cool, you're self-pacing, but if you're doing it within unit of study, what do you do next when kids don't master every skill? So we train teachers to do lesson classifications. So we have 3 classifications, so must do, should do, and aspire to. So if you take a unit in math and you have 10 lessons, well, we all know which ones have the Common Core Plus next to it, or those extension lessons, or maybe those lessons that aren't super important. So those might be our aspire to do lessons. We might have some that are on grade level that are important, that are our should do's. And then those most important lessons in a unit, we're going to call must do lessons. Every kid needs to master those at minimum to move on to the next unit. And then to create a classroom environment that is really one that's structured and designed to be supportive of students, all the research supports the creation of pacing trackers. So when you run a self-paced classroom, there's a fine line between a controlled chaos environment, which is our goal, and a completely chaotic environment, which is what we fear every day. So when you build pacing trackers, either public or personal, and there's 2 examples here. One's a game board that one of our 4th grade implementers in Pennsylvania uses. It's a really cool way to kind of create a fun and engaging environment for kids and parents to really understand, like, here's the scope of the unit, here's where I'm going, and the color coding can correlate to the must do, should do, and aspire to do classifications. The other option is a public pacing tracker. Walk into class, a kid looks up and they can see their name, they know where they're at in the unit, what they should be doing next, and who they can be collaborating with, who's on the same lesson and who's on a different lesson as well. So that self-paced structure really creates the conditions for you as an educator to run a self-paced classroom where the wheels are not actually going to come off. They're going to stay on, and we're all going to collectively travel with the same kind of summative assessments, end of unit structures, and then move on to the next unit together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kareem. And so apropos of that, one of the biggest struggles with, teachers doing any kind of transparent progress tracking with their students is that it takes a lot of work, right? You have to be able to do such a quick turnaround on giving feedback, grades, et cetera, on assignments. That becomes sort of the most difficult thing. And for many teachers, that means sacrificing a significant amount of their work-life balance to try to make it work. And some, can't quite get there, right? And so ASSISTments is a way that you can actually get real-time actionable data reports to track student progress and provide this sort of transparent tracking system the way that Kareem describes. And so I'm just going to go live and kind of walk through a little bit about the data that ASSISTments gives in our assignment report and our details report. So in our assignment report, you have the ability to obviously hide student names and randomize rows if you want to share data with students, which we recommend you do. And you can also see that each column represents a question, which you can click in order to actually see what that question looked like in the student view. But in terms of what's most important for the teacher, when they come and look at this report, they're going to see these the overall average score for the assignment. They're going to see the average scores for each individual problem, so identifying where those class-wide issues are. They're going to see common wrong answers, so of the students who answered incorrectly on their first try, how many of them put, 3 or more of them put the same wrong answer. You'll see what that wrong answer was and the percentage of incorrect students who put it. And then you'll also have your answer key. Below that, you can see each row of student data so that you can see their individual scores on across the problem set or on each individual problem. You can see the amount of time that they spent. And you also have, let's say you're looking at a student like my coworker Priyanka here, and she got a score of 30%. Let's say you want to dig a little bit deeper. You can do that by going to the details report, which is going to show you that play-by-play for each individual student. You can navigate between students from the top by selecting or shuffling between previous and next. You can even click show the problem so that you can see what problem is referenced in this student activity here. But then you can see what they did, how much time they spent on each attempt, what answers they put, what help they needed along the way, so that you can make an accurate judgment about what that student needs and how you can best support them. In addition, you have the ability to do essay scoring, where if a student gives a written response, you can go in and score and provide feedback on that written response as well. And then you can hide or show any of these columns here as well if you want to show this data or show scores, feedback, or exemplary responses with your students live, which again, we recommend that you share data with students, that you show them what you're seeing, and that you make direct connections between the data that's being generated by them that you're seeing and the next instructional steps you're taking to support them in their learning. So that's the assignment report and the details report. One other important note here. So if a student, if you see a student score like this, you look at their details and you decide to do some reteaching and you want the student to try again, you can always click that triple dot and click delete progress. And that'll allow the student to click the same link in Google Classroom or Canvas again and allow them to do those problems again. And I did just want to highlight, lastly, that we have a couple of new features here. We have an actions drop down in the report. And so for Google Classroom teachers, this allows you to upload scores into Google Classroom. And then you also have the option, whether you use Google Classroom or Canvas, to download the report as a CSV file. So when you're thinking about, what are these quick ways that I can manage tracking for all of my students, especially remotely, ground that in specific data, and more specifically, use something like ASSISTments that gives you the data that you need to empower you to provide these structures that will support your students and help them understand where they are every step of the way through your lessons, through your units, and for the entire school year. Another note on self-paced structure. So because you're getting immediate data, we find that a lot of our teacher users like to do some form of mastery-based grading. And so here's one sort of example of what that can look like. When you're getting this data from students and they're getting feedback on their answers, they know where they stand as well, right? So we did have one of our experienced teachers users that has students do a self-assessment at the end of each quarter based on how they've done, which they can do because they're getting this feedback and being part of the data conversation, right? And that's based on N, M, C, W, and U. So N is for needs more time to understand, M is for missing work with the correct answer, C is careless error leading to incorrect answers, W is work with correct answers on it, and then U is understanding. So you can correct the answer, and explain what the answer means as well. And so having these structures where students are a part of the conversation, where they understand where they stand, where they can be a part of this mastery sort of grading process or structure in your classroom, you can do that when you have lots of actionable data at your fingertips without having to spend hours and hours grading papers.
Love it. And that actually speaks to exactly kind of why we built our model, which is this idea that you should be data driven, and that I sat through what felt like 1,000 data meetings in my time teaching and did very little with most of that data except look at it and get concerned. So in our model, the goal is to really free you up so you're available to work with students based on data all the time. So one of the things we support folks with is building those mastery checks. Those mastery checks act like exit tickets for their lessons. These are absolutely the types of things you could be assigning with ASSISTments. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And ultimately, you want to provide multiple forms of a mastery check. You want to provide that room for kids to try their best to show mastery, and then define criteria for mastery and help students reach it. One of the things that really annoyed me as an educator, particularly as a math educator, is I don't know why revision was something that we only talked about in like paper writing. Ultimately, kids should be revising math problems just as much as they're revising any other skill. So in our classrooms and through our trainings, we help teachers define their criteria for mastery and then help students reach it through revision, reassessment, and reflection. So in my class at ProbStats, students had to get an 80% or above on assignments, or else they had to revise. There was no score under an 80%. And on a mastery check, they had to get an 100% or they were going to be reassessed. So really creating the environment where kids understand that they actually have to achieve mastery before moving from lesson 1 to lesson 2 to lesson 3, and then creating the systems and the structures to be able to execute that, regardless of the curriculum you use. I've used standardized curriculum, I've used Eureka Math, I've used IB Mathematics curriculum, and I've built my own curriculum, and it all works when you use an instructional delivery model that doesn't actually fixate on that. So that's how we think about mastery-based grading.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so the way that assessments ties into this is that in the platform, as students are answering questions, they get multiple attempts. They can try on a question, get feedback, and try again multiple times. So it gives them that chance to get comfortable with practice and getting feedback in between. We also know that lots of teachers use our assignment reports and sort of use mastery thresholds. You heard Kareem share that his mastery threshold was like 80%. Some teachers might use 70%. It's really up to you and what you do in your classroom. But we also have mastery-based practice problems called skill builders. And so I'm just going to go live into assessments here and just show you where these are and how they work. So essentially, skill builders are long problem sets where students just get assigned random problems from the set. All of the problems are for one skill, and the students have to answer 3 questions correctly on their first try in a row to demonstrate mastery. And so if you go to our skill builders folder here, you can see all of our skill builders organized by grade level, and in the case of high school, content. And you can click within any of these folders and topics and find skill builders that you can use to give your students that chance to demonstrate their mastery, get some additional practice on a skill. But these can be very useful, especially if your goal in your class or your structure in your class is a mastery-based grading structure. So that's skill builders. One quick note on skill builders, when you assign these, you cannot select problems. Again, students will get problems randomly from a long set. So you just go into your skill builder, you assign it to your LMS, and then students will have the opportunity to do those problems.
Great. Brian, I just put something in the chat on the skill builder report. And I just want to be mindful of time since we do have 2 other presenters. Once we wrap this up, we are going to do question and answer at the end.
Yes, thank you, Dawn. So thank you, and yes, being mindful of time, we're going to keep all of the Q&A to the end of the presentations, make sure our teachers have enough time to present. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Kareem just to sort of wrap up Modern Classrooms project.
Perfect. And this is going to be super quick. I just want to let everyone know that there's 2 ways where you can learn our model. The first and most popular way is the free course. There's 20,000 educators in there. Learn.modernclassrooms.org. Every single tutorial we have, every resource we have, every pacing tracker we have, all of our instructional video content, all that good stuff is in our free course. We do have a virtual mentorship program that schools and districts partner with us on. We have about 20 school and district partners at the moment, hundreds of teachers in our virtual mentorship program. But the free course is the most popular and very easy place to start. And if you're curious, those are all the resources on me / the organization. So modernclassrooms.org, learn.modernclassrooms.org for the free online course. Those are my social media tags and the organization's social media tags. And if you're interested in exploring a partnership, feel free to shoot me an email. But at the very least, I encourage everyone to just pop into that free course. It's a great place for you to just have access to content and tutorials.
Excellent. Thank you so much for Kareem for that. I appreciate you sharing about Modern Classrooms project today. And just again, as a quick note, for those of you in attendance, you will get a copy of this slide deck. So you'll have access to these links and this contact information should you want to reach out more about Modern Classrooms project. As a brief reminder, again, as we get through the rest of our presentations today, feel free to chat any questions, wonderings, or ideas that come to mind as you listen at the presenter's name in your comment, if you'd like to address your comment to a specific presenter. And our chat moderator, Dawn, is going to track those questions and share themes during the Q&A as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yamika.
Hi, everyone. I am Yamika Bullock. As mentioned before earlier, I teach at West Edgecombe Middle School. We are home of the Wildcats. Our grade levels are 6th through 8th, roughly 300 plus students there. 100% of the students in my entire district receive free lunch. And I have been a math teacher teaching at West Edgecombe for about 21 years now. Yeah. So currently I'm teaching 100% remotely. I have not been with any students there looking at that with the district now. Don't know what's going to happen. I teach twice a week, whole group instruction online for like an hour and 30 minutes. My instruction is a little unique because during my instruction, I make sure that my students collaborate during our live instruction using breakout rooms. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit more, and ASSISTments is a big part of that. So that kind of helps me drive my next steps. Okay, so my instructional model for now, which actually is when we're in the classroom as well too, would be to write it, record it, and breakouts. Breakouts are pretty much, now are virtual, but in the classroom, of course, using, because I do use open up math resources, I use illustrative math. It's full of, collaborative instruction type stuff or whatever. So my students are mandated to collaborate. So anyway, the first part is the note taking. Notes are very important in and outside of the classroom, be it, live instruction, face-to-face, or if virtual, because there are no such thing as textbooks anymore. So I mandate that my students do take notes. They have something that they are writing down themselves. It's pretty much vocabulary based. Make sure that they keep it organized. Of course, it's kind of difficult to check that now that we are in this very virtual COVID-19 world, but, I do encourage them to do it. And put titles in it and keep it as organized as possible. As I mentioned, we are remotely learning. So I make sure that my videos are recorded daily. And what that does is kind of provide some equity for those kids that may not have internet at the time. Our school does have internet access like from the parking lot. So if they can get by the school or whatever, they can bring their laptops that were school issued or whatever, and they can access those videos that I've done from my live instructions after the fact. So they can also, videos can also be used, for other things. They can go back and they can review if there's something that they didn't get or they missed out of the notes or they didn't understand. The videotape in those live sessions is really powerful and important. The last part of my model is the meaningful student collaboration piece. This is where I use ASSISTments. ASSISTments reports give me a lot of data, and I use that data to help me drive my further teaching practices. I'll take like the data from the formative assessments. I use the cool downs every day, and that helps me drive how I put my kids together in groups for the next activities and so forth. So using that, and you can use that data in so many different ways, but if you want to like make sure that you have a balance within those breakout rooms, it's really a good thing to do, to know where your students are, like if they did the work versus if they didn't do it, or if they did it and they didn't do so good on it, then you have some autonomy as to how you group those kids together. Okay. How ASSISTment supports my instructional model. I kind of jumped in there, but this is actually some real data that I took from one of my reports. So the way that I do my breakout rooms, if a student or some students that maybe did not attempt to do the activity, the cool down, or whatever that assessment was that I gave them from ASSISTments, then I will put them in a breakout room with myself. They'll be placed in a breakout room with me. And we will go over whatever needed content they need prior to doing the activity. So it's kind of like, I kind of get to catch them up in a sense, a little bit of a moment. And they still have to do the assignment that's encouraged for the day. But then the other breakout rooms are pre-assigned based off the data that I got from, like, say, the previous day. So, and that's just a little, snapshot of what I would do. You can recover pre-assigned rooms, or you can recreate all rooms if I wanted to use the same data from the day before or whatever, but I have the autonomy in that. So those kids are in the breakout rooms, and they're actually using the open up math resource like applets and little activities that are given in those lessons. Yeah.
All right.
I think did we skip one or no?
Yeah, it looks like we're missing a slide there.
Yeah, I think we are. But there was another one that that showed like the other students like that did the assignments. Students that had like 100% would be pretty much like the students that are masters in a sense of the activity or the lesson strand or content area. I would pair them with students that were like at 50%, so to speak, or whatever. So they could support those lower students. And then the students that were like 83% will be paired with the 67% students. And then those students that are like at 0%, like I said, will be with myself.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened to that slide.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That's my fault.
It's okay.
But basically, it was just showing like a real-time or a real data report from Yumika's class, and showing how she groups those students based on, as she said, the high-scoring students with maybe some of those lowest-scoring students, and then students who did a little bit better with students who did a little bit worse. But what model you use is based, or how you do that is based on what you're comfortable with, how you teach, and what works for your students. And so there are many different ways that you can approach it, and Assistments can support any one of them. Thank you so much for sharing, Yumika. I appreciate that. And again, just a reminder for those attending, any questions you have, place those in the chat. Feel free to @ the presenter name if you'd like to address your question to someone specific. And Dawn's going to keep track of those and share them during our Q&A at the end. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Irish, and I was a math teacher for 15 years, and I've been involved with Assistments for, I don't know, every time this comes up, I can never remember. More years than I think I'd like to admit, right, Dawn? And
we have an ongoing battle on who's been here longer.
and it's not me. I am not it. And I am currently a technology integrationist. So I have a little map of Maine, and I put a little red dot there, and that's generally where I'm from. So I live in the mountains. If you go skiing, that's kind of where I'm from. And so when I was a math teacher, I taught in a really rural part of the state where we had about 200 students in grades 6 through 8. We had about 75% of our students receive free and reduced lunch. That's not where I'm working right now as a technology integrationist. That school district where I was a math teacher, they are full in person still 5 days a week, and they've got everyone in the building, and they're still going strong. And they're managing to pull it off. And I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to pull it off, but they are. The school district that I am in now, we are in a hybrid model like lots of school districts, with a full remote team as well. And I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to hold on to that one either. And we have 1 day off a week, Wednesday. That's why you see me from my house, and no one is at school on Wednesdays. But to talk to you guys about Assistments and how I utilize Assistments in my teaching. Can we go to the next slide? Thanks. I was part of a research study with Assistments, and I kind of met Assistments at a really perfect time in my teaching when I was really realizing that I was a really traditional math teacher where I taught a lesson. Students did some sort of practice from a textbook or a worksheet. I did several of these lessons. They took a quiz. I did a few more lessons. They took a test. None of them did well on it. Next unit. And I kept doing this. And, we all taught like that for a long time, and things didn't go well. And I realized that something needed to shift. And I learned about mass customized learning. And the idea about mass customized learning is that, that students don't all have to do the same thing at the same time. But the key is that all students learn. And the time and how long they spend learning becomes the variable. And so I got thinking, well, how do I make that work? And that's when I learned about Assistments at the same time. And what I realized was I needed to be able to give different amounts of practice to my students. Some students needed to do more sets of practice, wherein other students needed to do less sets of practice. And so what I did is I created these, and you'll see on the screen here one of my contracts. And I broke it down into 3 steps. How are they going to learn a skill? How are they going to practice a skill? And then how are they going to prove a skill? And then they would reflect on how they did with that skill. I would reflect on how they did that on that skill, and I would give them feedback. This was actually a physical piece of paper that we would exchange back and forth. This was way back before we worried about COVID and germs and all those sorts of things. Guess we'd have to do it in some sort of Google form now. The big thing with what Assistments would do is a student would do a practice set. I usually would put in 10 problems. And if they got 80% or better, we decided as a class that 80% was kind of a mark that said, yes, I can do this skill. If the student could get 80% or better, they were ready to prove it on a formative assessment that they could do that skill. If they could pass the formative assessment, we decided as a class, yep, they were ready for the next skill. We kind of created the decisions about what they needed to get on their for mastery on their assessments practice and what they needed to get for a score on their formative assessments. We decided those things as a group. There was buy-in and ownership from the class, yet they came to the same conclusions every year. So if a student didn't get 80% or better on their practice set, they would do another set of practice. And if they didn't get 80% on that practice set, they would do another set. And I would be checking in with them, and I would be knowing how many sets of practice they've been doing, because I would have those amazing data reports from ASSISTments. I would be checking in on those data reports and seeing how many practice sets are students doing, where were they getting stuck, who did I need to check in with, and all that sort of stuff. And so I met ASSISTments and got working with ASSISTments just at the same time when I started thinking about how do I create a system where I let students do as many practice sets as they need to, where I have a system where I have a way for the problems to get graded for me. Because how could I grade all this work for them and be giving feedback to them in a timely manner? There was no way for me to do that. I needed a program to do that for me. And so that's where I met ASSISTments. And so ASSISTments took the burden of me needing to do the grading, and so that I could get around the room and give students feedback and be doing mini lessons and all that sort of stuff.
Oops, sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. And so one of the key things was that I really needed to teach the students about the symbols of success so that they would learn how to use the symbols of success. Those are the green check mark and the red X and the yellow highlighted box. And what do those different symbols mean? This is before we even called them the symbols of success. And what did we call that percentage that they get at the end? And what did that data report? I had to teach my students, how do we look at all of that data and how do we analyze it? And how do they know when they're ready to move on to the next step? So what I learned from a very early stage was that I needed to teach my students how to use ASSISTments. So how to use the data that they individually got back at the end of doing their practice set. How do they get in good habits about using ASSISTments, all of that sort of stuff. And then also, how do I get myself in a good habit of using the larger metadata about the entire class?
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your perspective as well. We really appreciate it. And with that, again, feel free to go ahead and chat any questions or wonderings or ideas that you have. And Dawn is going to share some big themes from the questions coming in. I know that we're running a little bit short on time, but definitely want to get to some of those questions coming in. And I'm just going to leave up this slide so we can see again for everybody's reference our presenters today. And with that, I will turn it over to Dawn.
Yeah, sure. And I just wanted to let everyone know that Sarah actually created a resource in our Teachers Corner, which kind of outlines how she used ASSISTments in her classroom. So I shared that link as well as a resource on those symbols that she was referring to in the assignment report. You'll find those in the chat. So one question came in for Yumika, and it's about how do you get your students to revise and reflect on their work? I think it's a lot easier when you're in the classroom, when you're sitting next to those students and having discussions. But in a virtual environment, do you have any tips on how you encourage students to revise their work and reflect in a fully virtual space?
Honestly, I try to do that one by one. We use Google Classroom as our LMS, and I use the personal little chat with them or whatever, and say, hey, come back over this or whatever. There's also some interactions that we could do that, especially with the essay scoring with students, with ASSISTments. So I may highlight whatever that question is and send it back to them, and we kind of work on it and revise it that way. There's just kind of different ways. It just kind of depends on whatever the student situation is, best way to communicate, I guess, with them. But we pretty much just do it through Google Classroom mostly.
Great. And a theme that came up right off the bat as everyone was introducing themselves was engagement. And I think this was coming mostly from teachers who are working in a hybrid or fully virtual environment. So Kareem, if I could go to you, just any tips that you can suggest in your mastery-based learning model? How do you keep kids engaged at home? Any suggestions for the teachers out there who are struggling?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question. I think first you have to accept the fact that remote instruction is just fundamentally harder. So, I mean, keep that reality in front of you. We work with thousands of teachers, and that's certainly the case. My biggest piece of advice with engagement is actually to focus less on engagement and focus more on mastery. I think a lot of times we obsess over this concept of engagement. I learned this when I was an educator. I was obsessed with whether or not my kids were watching me when I was lecturing and had their head up and were taking down notes. And what I think makes more sense is to actually focus on the end product. Does a kid actually show mastery? If they do, fantastic. I wouldn't worry about quote unquote engagement because we might be reading the wrong symbols, especially in a remote space. What does engagement actually mean remotely, especially when we think about asynchronous instruction, students working on their own time, right? Kids could be incredibly engaged in work, but not look all that engaged on a Zoom or a Google Meet. And you want to distinguish between those two factors because you might be focusing your energy and attention on the wrong thing. Now, when you think about mastery, then you kind of have better evidence and ideas to understand engagement. If kids are not turning in work, they're not showing mastery, that's a red flag that either they're not engaged or they are engaged and really struggling. And then it's time to think about how you can use those live synchronous sessions more effectively around small group and individualized instruction. The hardest part about remote learning is being able to facilitate those live sort of small group pivots. So ultimately, you have to recreate those spaces with an office hour style model, and don't be afraid to let the rest of your kids work asynchronously. When you build an effective learning environment where there is work to do, where there are instructional videos and tools like ASSISTments to be working on, then you can then pivot and work on those kids who haven't shown mastery and need to continue to kind of get that support they need.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Brian, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do one more.
Okay, so Sarah, why don't we go to you here? So like Sarah said when she introduced herself, she was in the classroom and now she's working as an instructional coach. So Sarah, any interesting models that you've seen in your new role that are different from how you teach that are worth mentioning, or different things that teachers are doing in the hybrid environment?
So one of the things that we're juggling right now, so we have 6 different teams at our school, because there's like 800 kids. So we have 6 teams, so we can try out all sorts of different things. And so we can do little like micro experiments all over the place. And I can usually find somebody who's game to like try out whatever crazy idea I have. Because I can dangle some sort of like cool technology toy. I'd be like, hey, you get to try this out, And so I have a whole team of teachers. They were having really poor engagement. Actually, this ties back to the previous question. They were in really poor engagement with the hybrid model. Like the students would come to school on the live days, but the remote days were they were not getting kids to really do anything. And so this one team was like, well, what are we gonna do? And I was like, why don't we try Zooming them in? Like, let's just give it a try. Even though there was all this taboo about Zooming kids into classes, right? I'm like, let's just try it. So we did. We got that whole wing of classrooms all wired up, and we're Zooming students in. And actually, we have some teachers on that team now that are Zooming in for various reasons, and it's working. That team has the best attendance. And actually, on some of the days, their remote students have better attendance than the in-person students have. So we're having great luck with Zooming students in. And actually what I really like about it is it's our 7th grade team. So we're a 7th, 8th grade building. So it's our 7th grade team. This is the first time that these students because they come from 5 different sending schools. So it's the first time they're all meeting each other. And so it's really important for all of these students to get to know each other. And so they're all meeting each other and they kind of want to come because they're meeting all these new friends. And they're meeting virtually. And so there's that kind of buy-in to come because they're meeting these new kids in these classes, whether it's in person or through Zoom.
Thanks, Sarah. It's great to have you, like I said, in both roles as having experience as a teacher and an instructor. So I think that that will wrap it up for the question and answer session. I just do want to note that I think I haven't had to do any virtual teaching to students in my experience, but in the spring we are working on putting together a breakout room toolkit that hopefully will help teachers kind of think about how to use breakout rooms more efficiently with ASSISTments data. So you guys can look for that coming with our spring programming.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dawn. And again, thanks to our presenters both for sharing your perspectives and your knowledge and wisdom. based on where you're coming from, and also in answering some of those questions. I understand also that we may not have gotten to every single question that came in, so we do appreciate those who shared. And as we get to the end of our presentation today, if any new questions come up and you'd like us to address those or discuss those with you, you can feel free to reach out to us. And so with that, we're just going to do a recap and next sort of steps here. We did spend some time talking about what ASSISTments is. We got a chance to learn from some of our experienced ASSISTments teachers, as well as Kareem from Modern Classrooms Project. And we even got to get to some of those questions coming in to learn about how ASSISTments can work in this sort of hybrid instructional environment. Dawn's going to put a link in the chat, but before we wrap up, we just want to share this link for our feedback survey. If you could take about 30 seconds to a minute just to answer our quick questions there. We do use all of the feedback that we get from teachers in our sessions to design future professional learning opportunities and improve the ones that we already give. So any feedback that you can provide on that would be useful. And just a note that today is the 18th of November, and the session is called Exploring Different Instructional Models Using ASSISTments. Again, if you want to learn more of the technical aspects about how ASSISTments works, you can come and ask questions in one of our upcoming drop-in help sessions, or you can check out our webinar library, which features recordings. In particular, our new user parts 1 and 2 are going to give you more of that technical understanding of the platform, if that's what you're looking for. And then also we're going to be doing revamping and redoing our webinar series starting in January. So be on the lookout for some of those professional learning opportunities as well. You can check out our website. We do have our help center where you can see, get useful resources and that sign up for webinars and see those recordings. We have our blog that you can go to and look at perspectives from different teacher users and stakeholders. Our teacher corner as well, where you can access artifacts and perspectives from our teacher users, and our professional learning section as well, where you can learn about some of the different opportunities that we offer at ASSISTments to learn more. You can also join our Facebook teacher user community, and I highly recommend it. We have people from all experience levels and all backgrounds who come in to share their thoughts, answer questions. I know that Dawn posts lots of useful hints and information and good tips there as well. So definitely a place you want to go. All of our teacher users receive our monthly newsletter, which can also contain useful updates. And we are also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So if you're interested in checking us out on other social media, you can do that. If, again, you have questions about today's session or just questions in general, you can reach out to us anytime at contact@assistments.org, and we'll be happy to help you there. Chances are there's a 50-50 shot you'll be talking with Dawn and I again there, because we help to manage our contact email, so definitely reach out.
Brian, I feel like we do it all.
We do. That should tell you about our commitment to ASSISTments and our passion for what we're doing in this work, right? One quick opportunity I wanted to share before we close out is that we are launching our spring virtual PLCs. And this is an exciting paid opportunity for 7th grade teachers who use OpenUp or Illustrative or Eureka/Engage New York. We're going to be facilitating this in concert with the Center for Math Achievement at Lesley University. And this is going to be a powerful shared learning opportunity that teachers can participate in. All teachers who participate receive an $800 stipend. And so if you or someone else you know who uses ASSISTments might be interested and they meet these criteria, you can feel free to have them use this link that'll be in the slide deck in our follow-up email to express their interest and see the details. And then the deadline for signing up for this is the 30th of November, so the end of the month. Based on time, we're going to go just straight to the feedback survey again. So again, if you can please just take about 30 to 60 seconds and complete our feedback survey. We do appreciate the feedback, and we use the feedback that we get from you to guide our professional learning moving forward. So definitely appreciate that if you can. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, it's a super busy time. Folks don't have a lot of time to do professional learning right now, so we definitely appreciate you joining us. If you do have any follow-up questions, as I said before, or something comes up and you just need some assistance with ASSISTments, then you can reach out to us at contact@assistments.org, and we'll be more than happy to help you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. So thank you so much for your time, and y'all have a great rest of your